The world of virtual reality gaming got a little more affordable with Meta launching a new subscription service on Monday. The service is known as the Meta Quest Plus. It will give subscribers access to 2 titles of their choosing a month. The cost, $7.99 a month, or just $60 a year if you pay for the whole year. The subscription is available to all Meta VR headset users. It's a big gamble for Meta's AR and VR tech unit, Reality Labs, which recorded a nearly $4 billion quarterly loss for April. And for more on what this means for the future of VR gaming, I'm joined by Michael Priem. He's the founder and CEO of Modern Impact and Advertising Agency with a focus on digital brand transformation. Good to see you, Michael. I had the fortune of testing out this service from Meta or Facebook when they had the Star Wars theme going on, and I put the thing on. They took me around. They showed me what to do. And 10 minutes later, I felt like I was in a bit of a daze, but it was pretty cool. And I guess my thought is that it is definitely very different than the traditional gaming that we often think of. What do you think the adoption rate is going to be for this type of service?
Well, I think the adoption rates, it's still in its early days, right? You know, the expense is not just the monthly subscription that you mentioned, but there's a massive underwriting expense to produce the games and have the content in the virtual world that's still emerging. So it's a delicate balance between producing what we as users want to go and experience, which costs a lot of money, versus even the expense of the user to get into the world. So yeah, the experiences when they're well done are absolutely fascinating and amazing in the virtual reality world, and they're transformative. But we're still early into the current adoption rate of VR.
The model that they have, the $7.99 model, why do you think they chose to go with this particular model? I mean, I know all these tech companies love it, but there must be a ton of research they've done ahead of time that maybe showed that people didn't want to pay perhaps the upfront cost.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, I think they are having to affix a price that's realistic based upon what's still available in the VR world, right? So, and if they're charging a price and the payoff and reward isn't there for consumers, they know there will be backlash for that. So I think it's an escalating. Let's get people into this. Let's get brands. Let's get the games. Let's start to build out more of what's, still missing. And you have to really look at, there's 2 parts of VR that's really expanding. There's both the gaming world, but we on the consumer side are experiencing a lot of the things that have been born from the metaverse. We're just not familiar as consumers that we are. There's a lot of content engines that are out there, like, Unreal Engine, et cetera, that are coming from other video game manufacturers, where we see those same engines powering the movies that we're going to see right now in the theaters, down to the imagery that we see when we shop for real estate. That's, confuses us. We don't know if that's a render or is that house actually built, because some of the virtual reality tools that are out there that are producing content are hard for consumers to really understand. Is that real or is it not real? And so there's a lot that's coming out of this that's still commercially viable, not just for those that are into the gaming community.
Well, funny you say that. A friend of mine who's big into the sports was talking about them creating a platform where you put on this virtual reality headset and you can be inside the stadium, say in row 1 or courtside or whatever your favorite sport is. You can be right there in the front, and you can turn to the right, you can turn to the left, and it feels like you're actually there. And they were saying they would charge people, $20 or $30, and you can be courtside at the basketball game. I mean, isn't sports potentially one of the big target areas that people would pay a heck of a lot more than $7 for if it meant I could sit in a seat that I could never afford?
100%, right? And so there's not just there's sporting, but there's also retail. Think of what our retail experiences are. The whole blended view between the 2D experience we have through digital laptop from our shopping experience versus the 3D type of experience that we can have. So the idea of how the metaverse, or maybe that's a dirty word if you're Apple right now with the launch of their new VR goggles, is still burgeoning, and the applications of it can be immense. You use sporting as an example. There's retail. Retail transcends not just consumer goods, but you look at what's happening in the automotive industry, right? Where cars are not physically always on lot. They're moving much more made to order, and you're doing your spec, all of that virtually. And some of the VR tools around just the automotive industry and the way they're exploring with it is really fascinating. So
is there a productivity benefit to this AR, VR? Like, let's say I work in an office and I've got Zoom meetings or team calls, and I put this on. Am I going to be more productive? I mean, does this enhance my, quote, work from home status?
Yeah, yes. And I think there's some organizations, we have clients that are actually exploring it with training, in the medical technology space, where your time as a doctor or physician in an operating room, how do you get that clinical experience to be training and get those rounds and cycles done? And virtual reality has amazing opportunities for them in the education and learning sector. So again, we look at this metaverse and we look at the AR, VR world, and the landscape is changing rapidly, and it's not just for the gamers, even though they're using things like subscriptions in the gaming world to drive that. And you got to stop and say, okay, well, why is that? Why are they focusing on the gaming and the subscription there? And if you think about what gaming as an industry has done into our world as we know it today, it's where a lot of the early interaction design and the user experience from the interfaces that we're used to seeing digitally, they come, and many of them have been born out of the gaming industry. So there's a lot that we will start to see that I think can evolve out of the VR AI world.
Well, I remind our viewers that this is a very early stage for this technology, but it has been around for a few years, but I guess it's finally now coming to the mass market. Michael Priem, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.